my name is Maryam Ghorbankarimi. I'm a film practice lecturer and a filmmaker at Lancaster University, and today I'm moderating this panel. So before any further ado, I'm going to pass on the mic to Anna Komochevo, who is a fantastic filmmaker. Some of you know her as the director of the Bay Film Festival, producer of the Bay Film Festival. But herself is a film producer and scriptwriter, and I hope some of you have seen Transgressing that had a guest screening a couple of weeks ago during the festival. And she's also today here to share her journey as a filmmaker with us. But I'm going to pass on the mic to her to introduce the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Maryam. Thank you everyone for coming. And we have some amazing people here. I'm really I don't feel myself that I should be here, but some people told that I should. So I joined those fantastic people. So I want to introduce Philip Hurd. He's a film producer, and we were screening a couple of days ago already his film Archive. Also, Philip is originally from Morecambe, and although now he's in London, but it's kind of a homecoming for him, and he's a patron of our festival as well. So, welcome, Philip. Next person I want to introduce is Rob Ager, who is a film analyst, not critic analyst, is it correct? And he has a fantastic YouTube channel called
Collative
Learning, and there are amazing videos there, which if you haven't seen, I really recommend you to go there, and there are some fantastic reviews of films overall, but a lot of Kubrick films as well. That's why Rob is here today, because our festival has a fantastic retrospective of Kubrick films. So, welcome, Rob. Our next guest is Ben Parker. He's a film director, and we were screening, was it yesterday? 2 days? Yes, oh my god, all the days are a mess in my head. Screening yesterday his film Burial. If I don't know, some of you might have seen and been in the cinema. And Ben is originally also almost local. He's from Kendal, although again also in London now, but people are living, but they are coming back to share with you their experiences. So, welcome, Ben. Our next guest is Graham Duff, who is actor and writer. Is it correct?
Acting's a small part of what I do, but I write, showrun, script edit, yeah.
Okay, I know you as an actor in Harry Potter, so this is like more aware of, but you will tell us more in a minute. The next guest, probably all of you know him, is the fantastic young Harlan, who is executive producer of many Stanley Kubrick films, and Stanley Kubrick is legendary, and young Harlan is legendary, and we are so blessed to have him here with us today. And the last but not least is Daragh Carville, who is a playwright, scriptwriter, producer, and showrunner of a very popular TV series, The Bay. Is it The Bay or Bay? Yeah. I always struggle with articles as a non-English person. So. Okay, The Bay. So Daragh is here today. He's also local. He lives in Lancaster. So yeah, all of our fantastic guests will share their experiences in a moment. But welcome, Daragh here.
So I'm not going to take a lot of your time, just reiterating that it would be wonderful that if you could, in 3-4 minutes, each of you, share your journeys up until where you are at the moment, and those of you who you're in the middle of your career, if you like to talk and mention your aspirations for future, that would be wonderful as well.
My name is Philip Hurd, film producer. I produced 3 films as lead producer now, but worked in the industry for about 16 years. My route, I think, like many people, it's a bit random and circuitous. It started out, of course, watching films. just grew up watching all the great blockbusters from the 80s and the 90s as a kid, and then I think as I grew up and became more literate, more sophisticated in my taste, then I started to discover European film and independent film. My trajectory into the business was, again, I was studying French at university. With a friend, we started a kind of a separate independent arts magazine at university, and I took charge of the film section. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to write about film, then I really should think about the deeper processes of making films, rather than just being somebody saying, oh, this looks great, or that movie was fun. So I started kind of reading script writing books, filmmaking for dummies. It was at the time when editing software was a bit more kind of accessible, so just got a copy of Final Cut Pro, just started tinkering around really. And then from there, I faced a big decision coming to the end of university. I had done all of the usual career workshops and had a job lined up at an accountancy company, of all places. So as I was doing the prep for that, I was also maintaining various film contacts that I developed over the previous years. One of which was a chap called Dave Heyman, who runs a company called Heyday Pictures, who produces the Harry Potter films. And I knew people at his company, and one of them said, oh, why don't you come and work with us for the summer? So I had to decide whether to go and do this unpaid internship at a good film production company, or go and continue my work as a management consultant, accountant. Of course, I chose the unpaid internship. Moved down to London and just kind of went from connection to connection, learning as much as I could from as many people as possible. Went from Heyday to another company that was just starting to make its own slate of films, run by a chap called Luke Rowe, who somebody noticed earlier is the son of Nick Rowe. And there I just happened to be there. They needed somebody young, hungry, enthusiastic, and I hope it's not immodest to say with some degree of talent. And from there, they made a couple of films, and over a period of about 3 years, they made a few great films, and that culminated in the film We Need to Talk About Kevin, which I had an associate producer credit on that film. And through that, I learned the craft. I learned everything about being on set, development, and then also crucially about financing, distribution, sales, etc. So once I'd made those films, they were crazy enough to let me develop my own projects. And the first one I commissioned was the film that we played here 2 days ago called Archive.
Okay, so I'm Rob Ager. I get called a film analyst, but I've done a lot of things over the years. I'll give you the briefest version that I can. As a kid, my dad let me watch way too many adult-themed films from an early age. I saw The Shining when I was about 7 years old, and Clockwork Orange about a year later. So Stanley Kubrick was my favourite filmmaker as a kid, and I didn't really perceive much depth in his work or anything from there. But as a teenager, I wanted to be a filmmaker, but the home technology to make films and edit them at home wasn't available. And I grew up in a very rough part of Liverpool, and I never knew anybody anywhere who went to university. So the thought of going academically to try and get into film was a non-starter. And so it was around about when I was about 26, 27 years old. Suddenly I was about to say digital video cameras became available. And then it was like, wow, you can go out and buy a cheap camera and you can shoot things at home and edit them at home with software, and I was like, great. So I got into short filmmaking. I made 3 short films, but I didn't like doing the short films that are like, oh, here's a 5-minute short film, because to me it's just not long enough to have a narrative. So I would do films that were 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I did 3 of those. And the first film I did, I'd never been on a film set before, but I was producer, director, writer on that first film. So first day, completely messed up, and very quickly learned. I just found diving in at the deep end, you learn so fast. A lot of people like move up the industry slowly, be it deliver the tea first, and then you might get to hold the microphone. And no, just diving at the deep end and just make terrible films and learn fast. So after I'd made a number of short films, I then started studying Stanley Kubrick and Hitchcock and David Lynch in more detail. Not because I wanted to be like a film critic or anything like that, but I wanted to study their craft to find out why their films were so good and how I could do similar. So I was studying my favourite scenes shot by shot, studying every little detail, the sound, the lighting, the choices of camera, angle, the editing and everything. And in the process of doing that, I ended up taking a completely different career path of becoming a film analyst, because I was discovering things in the films of Stanley Kubrick and Hitchcock to begin with that blew my mind, things that had been staring me in the face for years, and I had no idea these things were going on, but I'd always felt that there was more there, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the stuff I was finding, especially in Kubrick's films, was so mind-blowing. I thought, you know what, I think I'll just put filmmaking aside, and I think I'll just do film analysis videos, because I want to share with other people what I'm finding in these movies. And within the first month or two, it was like 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I think I was the first one on YouTube to do the kind of video essay, which has now become so popular. There's whole companies, corporate companies who are doing the same type of thing. As far as I know, I was the first one to do it. And so I spent like about 15 years, maybe a little bit longer, doing that. And I think it's 230,000 subscribers at the moment. And I've never gone back and made any more films, but I might go back to filmmaking at some point in the future.
Yeah, I grew up in Kendal, which is not far from here, which was lovely. I couldn't wait to leave, actually, but I enjoyed the hills. I started doing short films with a camera. My dad bought me a camera, and I used to use my friend's Ford Escort as a dolly, try and figure out the Hitchcock shots and different things that I'd seen in films, made some questionable short films. Some of them were really fun and cool, some of them were terrible. Then I went to Lancaster and Morecambe College and did a BTEC foundation course there. Again, more short films, more making films with my friends. Then I went to Leeds. I chose to go to Leeds because the Northern Film School there was a really good film school. I didn't do the film school course. I did a broad course at Leeds, and I used equipment from the Northern Film School. I used to exchange favours and do posters for them, and I used to get like a DOP and some camera equipment. And so I had some short films from there, and then went down to London, got a job at Bravo TV because I wanted to get into film. Lost that after a week because I wasn't very good at making cups of tea. But I found that I had design work from my course in Leeds, which I exchanged into a job doing film posters. And one of those film posters was we need to talk about Yemen. So our paths might have crossed.
Which one? The blue and red one?
Yeah. Independent, right?
Yeah, that would have been for artificial light and distributors, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did film posters for 10 years. Always kept on making short films along the way, tried to get into film. Always looking at the film industry from the edges. And then after 10 years of doing film posters, I did a short film that got into some festivals. I got a bit of money. I got a producer to give me a tiny bit of money. That producer liked my short film. The short film did really well at festivals, and I tried to put that into a feature, turn it into a feature. So that took me about 2 years after the short film. I did a feature for 400,000, which isn't much, which was set on a submarine, which fills up with water, which is really not enough to do that for. Had I known. Yeah, and that did well. That did a couple of festivals, and then I tried to parry that into a second feature with a bigger budget, and that was Burial. And the producer of Burial was someone that I met at Cannes along the way. I used to, with all my film friends, we used to go to film festivals. If you get the chance to go to a film festival, it's kind of open. So Cannes and Calabavari and stuff like that, where you can, you know, hang out with the filmmakers and sort of hang around for not much money. I bumped into so many people doing that, and one of the people I bumped into was Matt, who came from Lancaster. At the time we didn't know we were from the same area. He really liked my script. It took us 3 or 4 years to get the money together, trying to write my own scripts in the meantime, more short films, and then we finally got the film made 3 years ago. We shot it in Estonia during COVID, and yeah, it came out last October. And that's my journey.
I couldn't read until I was 9 years old, because basically I was a bit slow, a bit thick. Once I could read, I just devoured books, but I'd always loved film and television. And at school, when they'd say to you, you know, fill up a page of your exercise book with a story, I would literally fill the whole book. I was obsessed. And I still am obsessed by writing. So I left school, and there was only a few things I was good at, which was art, drama and writing, even though I was dyslexic. And I couldn't really figure out a way forward, so I went to art school, did 2 years in Blackburn, then went to Brighton, did 3 years there. Whilst I was at art school, I realised visual art wasn't my forte, but performance and writing was. So I formed a theatre company while I was there, and basically my coursework fell apart because it took off and we were off doing tours and things like that. So I left art college full of sort of thinking, right, that's it, my career's underway now, I can start writing and doing TV and radio. It took me 10 years of rejections. So in that time I was doing fringe theatre and bits of stand-up and stuff, but I was constantly sending off scripts to radio and TV. And it literally was a decade, I'm not exaggerating. And I look back at that period now as forming scar tissue that meant that the rejection didn't hurt as much. And that scar tissue is still useful today. I got, my first commission was to do a Radio 4 comedy series called Stereo Nation, which ran for 6 series, got great reviews but didn't get recommissioned. I acted in that as well. Acting is a small part of what I do, but it is part of what I do. And again, I thought, right, I've had my own series on national radio. I wrote it, I starred in it, got great reviews, we're underway. Another 3 years of rejection, notices followed, and then I approached Baby Cow, a TV company that had just been set up by Steve Coogan and Henry Normal. And I pitched this TV series to them, and 9 months later we started filming it, which again gave me a very false impression of what it's like, because I thought, great, yeah, you pitch stuff, people go for it, and then you make it. And of course that's that's happened to me once since, but that's a very rare situation. So I've since gone on, I've written over 100 TV programmes, I've written over 100 radio programmes, but I still get rejected all the time for stuff as well. I've got several things in development, I've got something coming up next year, I've got a couple of things coming up next year, but you really have to be very dedicated as a writer, I think, to just have multiple projects on the go and keep pushing, and that's what I do all the time. So yeah, I've also produce things. I do a lot of script editing and script doctoring on other people's projects and films as well. I don't like holidays, I just like to be creative and work all the time, so that fills all my life, most of my evenings, most of my weekends, and here I am today on a Sunday doing this as well. So, I'm loving it, don't get me wrong. So yeah, that's my journey. There you go.
I'm not a filmmaker. I'm at best a helper. And I learned how to help with 30 years with Stanley Kubrick, and afterwards I made some films, but they're documentaries, and it's not the same thing. I learned from Stanley Kubrick 4 essential things. You need only 4 things to make a film that remains, and that doesn't disappear overnight, that remains, and that is an idea. You have to have an idea. And number 2, you have to have a script. And number 3, you have to have a script. And number 4, you have to have a script. And if you have that, you have a chance of making a film. Your idea combined with a script you have really filed and worked on during the filming, then you have a chance of making a film that stays. Now, I'm here only because of my history. I think after Stanley's death, I made some documentaries and short films, and I'm working on film schools. And I work on film schools showing what I have learned as a helper from Stanley Kubrick. And short films are important because they show a young man or a young woman how to present herself or himself as a potential for future films. I'm only interested in short films, I said that the other day, which are there for showing your talent. I'm not interested in anything else. I'm only interested in short films that lead to something else, that lead to a feature film. Because with short films you can't make any money. With short films you can't survive. It's a hobby. I'm not interested in hobbies. So the short film, and I'm later on showing you out of hundreds and hundreds of short films that I've seen, maybe eight which are great. You'll see that later. And all these films have led to another film, to another film. I mean, they're great filmmakers by now. That's all I can say.
Hi, I'm Daragh Carville. So I'm a writer, and that's all I ever wanted to be. You can probably hear from my voice, I'm not from here. I'm an off-comer. I'm from Northern Ireland, grew up in a place called Armagh, working class background family. Nobody I knew was involved in the film industry, TV or theatre or anything like that. But like all of us probably, I started as a fan. I started watching film and TV and just becoming a lover of that form of storytelling, and wanted to be in that world, even though it seemed like a world that was completely inaccessible to me. I was the first generation in our family to go to university, and I decided I was going to do film and drama. And I went to Kent, the University of Canterbury in Kent. And I became a writer while I was there, and it literally was the luck of the draw, because I wasn't doing they didn't really have creative writing courses at that time. I was just doing a film and drama degree that was quite, sort of critical focused. We watched lots of films, including lots of Kubrick, and studied them and thought about them, wrote essays. We didn't make anything, but there was one module in the last year that was a playwriting module, where you actually did some writing. And all the drama students wanted to do this module, and there were only like 10 places, and there were maybe 50 students in the year. So rather than choose us on, in terms of merit or talent or anything like that, they put us in a room, lecture theatre, and literally drew our names out of a hat. And my name came out of that hat. And so I was able to do this playwriting course, and as a result of that, I wrote a play. The first thing that I'd written that was any good at all. I'd written terrible stuff before then, terrible poems. But I wrote a play, and some people from the Royal Court Theatre in London were sort of involved tangentially in our drama course, and they came to see a little presentation of the work we were doing on this playwriting course, and they liked mine, and they chose it to present as part of a Young Writers Festival at the Royal Court as a rehearsed reading. It wasn't a full production, it was a rehearsed reading, but it was the first time I'd had the experience of working with actors, and the first time I'd had the experience of having work presented in front of an audience. And I was like 21, and it completely blew my mind, and it made me think, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Then, and sort of picking up on what Graham was saying, then it took years before I got back to that. Because you have these kind of occasional moments where you get lucky and there's a kind of alignment of the planets or whatever, but a lot of the time you're just struggling, and you're meeting a lot of rejection, and you have to build that scar tissue that Graham was mentioning. But eventually I moved back to Ireland, and I sort of made connections, and that thing about networking and making connections and meeting the right people is really important, obviously. So I became involved with a theatre company in Belfast called Tinderbox, who are a new writing company, and they liked what I was doing, and they put on a play of mine. And that started to open doors with the screen industries, and I went on, I've written 2 screenplays for sort of independent cinema, and that then led to me getting opportunities in television. So I had a couple of sort of breakthrough moments, but interspersed with long periods of bitter rejection. And the biggest breakthrough for me has been the Bay. And when we sort of do our roundtable-y bit, I'd be very happy to talk about that. So that's me. Thank you.
I'm also a filmmaker in the probably beginning of my career. I started as a theatre director. My undergrad degree 20 years ago was in stage directing and playwriting. And then when I finished the course, I never actually went to do anything in theatre, because I kind of started wanting really much to do film. Although I didn't have any film education, but again, as some people were mentioning, I started to watch films and started to think how to make them. And then I co-wrote a feature film screenplay, which we co-produced. I was an assistant producer, assistant director, production designer on this feature film, so it was a very, very low budget feature film, which we made in 2004. But it went, for the first ever feature, went really good. We managed to not just go on festivals, but also to sell it to the TV. It was back in Russia when I wasn't here yet. And it was on TV, and people saw it, and it was exciting that I was a part of something, and that's how I kind of got ill with film and said, yeah, I want to do this. So originally I was mostly interested in screenwriting, which I was writing a lot, but I was also taking every opportunity with any of my friend filmmakers of being on film set. So I tried probably every possible role, apart from technical ones, because I'm not a tech person, on film set. So I was production designer, assistant director, assistant producer, script supervisor, I was grip, gaffer, like whatever you can imagine, tell me. And I've never been DOP, probably that's the only one. And being on film set kind of taught me a lot about the whole process of filmmaking. So when I moved to the UK to do masters in screenwriting and kind of continue developing my my skills as a scriptwriter. So the most terrible thing for me as a scriptwriter is pitching your script to someone and trying to sell it so that someone makes it. And then at some point I thought, maybe I should start producing films. Then I don't need to pitch them. Then I will just pitch them to myself and I'll accept it. So yeah, my first short film I made just after I finished my master's in screenwriting, so I produced my own little screenplay, just 5 minutes. And all my experience before working on bigger film sets, on feature films and all those roles I just said, gave me like good understanding of what producers should know to produce a film, how to bring the team together, what each team member, each crew member is doing or should do, and be able kind of to orchestrate them. And since then I produced, how many films have I made? About 6 short films. I don't remember now. The current short film is kind of the one which is now on festival round, is the one I'm most proud of. Although I think I'm proud of all of my films, although I see many imperfections, obviously. But the best thing is with every film to do something better than the previous one. Then it's kind of development, and you develop. So the last film, Transgressing, is currently at festivals. We're very proud to have received 26 awards, 17 nominations, And nothing really big, no Oscars, no BAFTA, all rejections of all huge festivals, but yeah, it's kind of a way of, again, accepting the rejections, and also watching films is very kind of subjective experience, so if someone doesn't like my film doesn't mean that my film is bad. So yeah, and now I'm here, and my next plan is hopefully I will start developing my first feature film as a producer, although I've written feature films and TV series, but I've produced only short films, so in January, hopefully I will start developing my first feature film.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful and honest sharing of your experiences up until now. If I'm allowed and may, it's wonderful to see that the couple of threads that links everybody's experience, despite the fact that you come from different worlds and probably are at different stages in your career as well. And the first and foremost is the love for the medium. And the other one is the enthusiasm and the drive that kept you going and not give up. And whether you modestly put it that you're just a helper, we know that no film is made without everybody's work and hard work. The same way with this festival, with all the wonderful volunteers that are around. If everybody would not work well together, a film would not materialize, and we wouldn't have the pleasure of sitting down watching them and writing about them. If I may, I would like to kind of open the questions to the audience. We have about 10 minutes. It would be nice if you have a couple of questions that might be relevant to all of our speakers.
Both from a screenwriter's perspective and a producer's perspective, what is it that makes you decide this script should be pushed into production? So what elements in a script really convince you from, okay, I need to write this or I need to produce this?
I don't have a very specific formula that I apply to that thinking. It's, I'll read it, if it gives me the right kind of emotional reaction, if I see within it the ability for something that is cinematic as opposed to a form of drama that could be told in another medium. That's really about it. I'll just read it and see if it's something that I would want to watch on screen, really.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
As a writer, I think the essential thing is that it appeals to you, that you're passionate and excited about it, because it is a long haul. It's loads of rewrites. It's screwing it up and starting again. It's taking on board comments from people that say, we love it, but we think this bit absolutely doesn't work. If you're not passionate and driven to write it, you might as well give up. It's got to appeal to you. Sometimes when I'm script editing, I'll be shown a script by a new writer, and I'll say, what made you want to write about this? And quite often people say, oh, we thought it's the sort of thing people might go for. We thought it's the sort of thing somebody might commission. And that is exactly the wrong way to think about it. It's counterintuitive, but if it doesn't appeal to you, you've got no barometer as to whether or not you're hitting the right beats, whether or not it's working. If you've got in your mind some imaginary other force that's going to say yes or no, but that's all made up anyway. And like I say, it's a campaign. You start writing, you are usually a good year away from that being in production. So it's got to sustain your interest and your passion for all that period of time. So if you're a bit wishy-washy about it, or you're writing something to please somebody else, the odds on it falling down are very, very high. You've got to be passionate about it yourself. You've got to write something that you yourself would like to watch or listen to. I really firmly believe that. And that's why I'm being so hectoring.
Excellent.
Jan totally agrees, so that's enough for me. Daragh?
It's a really interesting question. I also teach screenwriting at university at Birkbeck in London, and so I read a lot of students' work, and I watch a lot of work in progress, and the real question that's always in the back of my mind when I read a script, and also when I'm working on a script, is why should I care? And that's a I mean, it sounds really simple, but that's a very high bar for us as writers. But it is the job. You know, you've got to make the audience care. You've got to make them want to, you know, read the next page. So that's kind of the first principle, and you've got to kind of, you know, every aspect of your story you need to kind of judge in those terms. That's usually to do with character. It's usually to do with why should I care what's happening to this person or to this set of people. And then the other thing is, it's a more intangible thing, but the writing has to lift off the page. You know, when I read a script, I almost don't want to feel like I'm reading a script. I just want to be in that world. And if I can sort of see the writing all the time, then I'm not, you know, I'm not quite engaged enough. Yeah.
Answering your question, for me, it's the easiest. The script should be mine, then I will produce it. But it's not about it. My note was, while preparing this festival, and especially it's part of it as a short film program, I was watching quite a lot of short films. We had about 500 submissions this year from about 50 countries, so that was a lot. And I haven't seen all the films. We had like 23 selection committee members to watch them, but I've seen quite a lot of them. And what was striking from this experience of watching films, that story, the script, is the hardest part of the making a film. So what Jan said before, you should have a script, and a script, that I absolutely agree. Nowadays there are so many amazing ways to shoot a beautiful film. And I've seen several films submitted to our festival which didn't go anywhere, although they were absolutely beautiful. The cinematography was beautiful, music was amazing, acting was very decent. So it was a proper quality made film. But then, echoing Daragh, why I just don't care about the story, what's going on there. It just doesn't touch me. So it's a beautiful piece of filmmaking, but there is no touching story there. So I just wanted to touch on this.
Can I have that very good answer? Okay, I did not take this approach when I was making films originally, but I would now if I went back to filmmaking. And that is, I would not start a film project unless I had a story that I felt that the world needed to hear. Something that has to be told. It's so important. It's more important than your desire to make money. It's more important than your desire for recognition. You know, because a lot of people go into filmmaking because they want recognition and money. I see that so much. And I find that the films that come out of that are usually just imitations of other filmmakers. The originality comes from when you've got a personal experience in the world that has not been done on film before, something unique. So when I used to do film classes in Liverpool, I used to teach some film classes, I used to say to a lot of the young filmmakers there, go out and get some life experience, go and experience the world, get into some dramatic situations, get into unusual situations, and expose yourself to things that fall outside of everything you've ever seen in film. And once you've got those experiences, you should have stories to tell that you can put on film. And that's the approach I would take today.
If someone was confident that they've written a great script, what would their next sort of, where would they go from that?
And the most important thing is to get it into the hands of a producer. Find a producer who really connects with that story, and that's easier said than done. A lot of people think you have to get an agent, you have to go through this. You don't have to do that. Just find a good producer. Go see the films that are like your film or that you like. Find out who produced it. See if those producers are going to be around at any film festivals. Try and connect with them. There are always things like that. Try and get it into the hands of a producer. It is easier said than done because it's quite hard, but that would be a good way to do it.
Any other advice from any of the panel?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think that's spot on. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of going to production companies rather than individuals. And most production companies, if you look at their websites, they'll say, we do not accept unsolicited scripts, which is incredibly off-putting for new writers. But if you look at the producers that make the programs that you make, see if they're on Facebook, see if they're on WhatsApp or whatever, and try and connect with them directly. I think that is the way, rather than the monolithic form of the company, which can be very daunting. So it's the same answer, but just with some more words.
From a practical point of view, if you have a script and you're happy with it, you also have to have a synopsis of the script to send it to an agent. You have to have an agent, and that's the sequence. The agent reads the synopsis, and if you're lucky, he finds it so interesting that he reads the script. If he reads the script and finds it really compelling, then you might have a chance that he goes to a studio with it. But that's the way to do it. And everything else is an illusion.
Daragh,
Yeah, I mean, all of that is true. But I bet some people here are thinking, yeah, but how do you get an agent? How do you get your work to an agent? One thing that I often suggest to my screenwriting students, and I can see some people in the room here who've had this experience, Tony at the back. There are, I don't know, maybe not everyone will agree with this idea, but there are lots of competitions out there nowadays, and some of them are probably pointless, but some of them are excellent ways into the industry. I would urge everybody to keep an eye on something that didn't exist when I was starting out. Well, the internet didn't exist when I was starting out, but the BBC Writers' Room website keeps writers updated with opportunities, competitions. They've also got an amazing archive of scripts. You can just read any script you want to read on there. But I would watch out for things like the Red Planet Prize and the various open submission windows that BBC operates, just as ways of getting your work out there. That can be a first step towards, maybe you're shortlisted in a competition or something, and that's something you can say to an agent. That will that might help nudge the door open. But it's hard. There's no taking away from that.
There's another side to it, namely that studios are looking for great scripts. It's not only that the writers have to place it, the recipient is very, very, very difficult to satisfy, and is looking for a script, is looking for it, and looking for an agent. Come on, do something great. And so it's two sides to it. It's also the recipient.
A friend of mine, James Payne, who's a screenwriter, did a lot of EastEnders and various things. He said I did a taught a course with him one time, screenwriting, and he said, if you want to get your stuff on TV and in the cinema, all you have to do is write something that's irresistible.
That's right. Irresistible.
Yeah, and it's all of everything everybody said is totally correct. But just also to add that if you can find like a little filmmaking team, find a friend who's a director or other creative people who want to team up, and then you kind of all put your various crafts into it and actually make something. And then once you've got something, maybe not a feature film in the first instance, but a short film, then as a team you can grow and develop, take that little camera test thing that you did like into a dramatic short film that gets selected at a few festivals, then that becomes like a team that either continues to develop that into a feature film or has different ideas and does something else. But working with good people and kind of finding your little tribe and crew is also a way of progressing ideas from conception to something.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
As a starting point at the beginning, when you haven't got any films to show anyone, to show that you can actually do the job, produce it yourself. It's another approach, and I think it's really important to have a go at producing yourself, because a lot of people enjoy the writing process. You get to sit in a room, just take your time and stuff. But when you're producing, you're having to contact people, get out there, speak to people, organise resources, and it's a real learning experience. And you start to find out what kind of limitations are placed upon you budget-wise in terms of your script, and it affects your script writing, because your script writing then takes budget issues into account. I think producing is a very underestimated art form. It's kind of considered to be like just a business thing, but I think it's very much an art form, and it takes a lot of skill to organise a great deal of people and resources. And I'm pretty sure Jan would agree with that. Yeah, so.
Thank you so much.
Just sorry.
It also depends very much. It also depends very much for what you want to do, actually. If we are now talking only about scripts and script writing, but there are lots of people who want to direct. They have to prove it, their talent in another way, and that's where a short film comes in. Or some people say, I'm a brilliant cinematographer, and they have to show it, that they are brilliant. I have a short film, only cinematography, and he now works in Hollywood. You know, so that works. So these are examples. Yeah.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on what Rob said about producing it yourself and how you learn. It's like, if you're a writer and you try and produce something yourself, you'll learn about production. But I think everybody's doing the same. So, you know, a producer will be learning about screenwriting, and a director will be, you know, learning more about working with actors. With the end result that, you know, these have separate titles, but I think the best people in all of these roles also have a really good understanding of what everybody else is doing as well. So if you're thinking that you want to write and that's the credit that you want, it will benefit you if you start thinking like a cinematographer and an actor and a producer and a director.
On that wonderful note, which as a teacher I fully take on board, and I'm hoping some of my students who are here have tried to do this when they're making their short films. I think we were taking a 5-minute break, and our wonderful panelists, Anna will direct them to which table, and they'll come and we'll have some table conversations.
Sort of looking at post-festival lives for short films, which I guess is something very close to a lot of us in this room. Looking at how you get that connection after that, connecting to an audience, how you actually make money out of short films, which is very difficult. But looking at streaming platforms at different levels, sci-fi seems to be doing better in streaming platforms for short films and other genres. And that was our discussion.
We were learning a lot of things, particularly about, particularly with short films, that it's also important to think about all the marketing around your short films as well, making that look as professional as possible, like films posters that you're talking about. That can, you know, in a way, making that look as good as possible, because that helps with like marketing materials. And we're also looking at talking about how we get different things financed, and going out, how important going out to festivals is, particularly Cannes and stuff like that.
And so before going to the break, can I invite everyone to join me to thank our panelists for giving us